Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and this is the operational report on the Russian operations. The Russian offensive is back. So this is going to be an operational report on the Russian offensive again because there is Russian offensive elsewhere other than in Bakhmut. So let's move to the most significant. It's actually over at the Kupiansk front. So at this is Kupiansk, and in the Kupiansk front, the Russian forces have previously, if you have been watching the SITREP, you will have known that the Ukrainian forces, Ukrainian Defense Ministry have been reporting that the Russians are attacking Masyutivka, and in the latest information, we established that the Russian forces have captured Masyutivka. However, information from Raiba mentions more details. They say that the Russian forces are not able to capture Masyutivka if they did not capture the high ground over on the western shores of the Oskil River. So there is this Oskil River here, as you can see, and this area here is high ground. The Ukrainians have was previously holding up this position, and this high ground oversees the entire village, which means that the Russians attacking here will be taken out easily by the Ukrainian forces because they have fire control over the entire region here, because this is the low ground. And so the Russian forces actually crossed the Oskil River and have captured this entire area and established some kind of a secure foothold over on the western part of Oskil River. And this is rather significant because this position cannot be lost, because if the Russian forces want to keep Masyutivka, they will have to keep this area here, and this is actually extremely close to Voreshna, which is actually a Ukrainian stronghold in this region here. So the Ukrainians will have to react. They will have to attack these Russian forces around here, and should these Russian forces give up this position, then Masyutivka's capture would be kind of pointless. So we shall see how this develops. Will the Russians actually push out from here and create some kind of a massive shocker? Very unlikely. As we all know, the Russians are very, very conservative in most cases, so it's unlikely. The Ukrainians did do their own attack in Voreshny and over in the Voreshna region. So this but the Russians are holding the line very well. They have defenses in all this area here. Other than that, we also have information by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry of the Russians attacking Sinkivka, which means that with these two attacks, we have the Masyutivka, the crossover into the western part of Oskil River, and the attack of Sinkivka. The entire front line here is now activated. The Russians are now putting more the actions and operations within this area here of the Kupiansk front. So we will continue to monitor and see whether the Russians will continue this operation, or will this be just another one-day thing. So but the Masyutivka has been reported to be fighting for days already, so the capture does seems to be legitimate. Whether they will do more around this region will be the question. There is continued bombardment reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. We have bombardment at Timkovka, Kaislivka, Tabaivka, Berestovil, Stemekivka. So this is across 2 days. So as you can see, the information is for day 445 to 446 for the 14th to 15th of May. So you can see that it is a consistent shelling of the front line on the Ukrainian position. And moving away from the Kupiansk Fiatoway front, we have also shellings reported at Nevsky, Yampolivka, and Dibrova. All these are pretty standard already. By now, you probably would have known. And all these bombardments are because the Russians are waiting for the Ukrainians to attack. And the Ukrainians to attack, they need to gather their forces. So all this shelling against strongholds, deployment positions, and gatherings areas, or even control points, HQs, are all very important for the Russians to delay or terminate the Ukrainian offensive or any offensive operations that they want to do. So it's a disruption. Let's see. Okay, so within the Bakhmut city itself, there is information, as usual, coming from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry of the Russians are attacking. They are reportedly attacking Kryvyi-Rivka, Bodanivka, Ivaniske, and towards Patashne here. And this information is hard to tell whether it's legitimate. We do have shelling. We do have information from the Russian Defense Ministry about shelling at Bodanivka and Chasivya. So whether they are doing a counter-offensive to recapture lost positions, I don't think so, because in this area here, the Ukrainians do outnumber the Russian forces. From my feeling, when I'm monitoring all these things, it does seem like the Ukrainians have a numerical advantage, because they are preparing for the offensive. So which is why the Ukrainians managed to eventually gather such a big force that managed to push back the Russian forces in this area here. So definitely the Ukrainians still have a lot of forces here, and with information coming from the Russian Defense Ministry detailing this counter-offensive of the Ukrainians, it does seem like the Russians have quite severe losses in this attack. So they say that they repel all the attacks. However, so they because Prigozhin says that there is no airborne forces in the flanks. So the Russian Defense Ministry now in their reports made it a point to highlight who are on the flanks. So they mentioned the 4th and the 200th Motorized Rifle Brigade and the 6th Motorized Rifle Division is actually in the flanks. So that is not the airborne forces, which Prigozhin or the Wagner forces is correct, that the airborne is actually not defending the flanks. And so at the south of Ivaniske, so this is Ivaniske. So in the southern part of Ivaniske, this area here is actually controlled or defended by the 4th Motorized Rifle Brigade. And so you see, in the south of Krasnoye, which is Ivaniske, they suffered a loss because the commander of this brigade has been killed. So they destroyed. So numbers always take it with a pinch of salt. 3 tanks, 4 IFVs, and 2 armored vehicles. And the commander died while being evacuated from the battlefield. So during the 3rd attack, so the Ukrainians did attack quite a few times. So you can imagine how severe it is, this fighting is. And at 3 tanks, 4 IFV, this is actually not much. 3 tanks, so 1 battalion have around 9 tanks. From the calculation I get from the leak paper. So so the Ukrainian forces gathered around 12 brigades. 3 formed in Ukraine, 9 formed by NATO with NATO weapons. So each of them seems to have around 30 tanks. And in NATO standards, which what we do in Singapore as well, every 3 brigade, 1 brigade there's 3 battalions. So that's around 9 to 10 tanks per battalion. So with 3 tanks destroyed, that's basically around a third of the battalion tank force is actually destroyed. So around a brigade have around 100 plus armor vehicles. So that will maybe make it like 30, around 30 plus armor vehicles in a battalion. So with around 6 armor vehicles destroyed, that's actually not much. So this is the South Ivaniske site, and in the northern part, the fighting here seems to be much more heavier. Again, the commander here also died. The commander here is this name, which doesn't matter. You also don't know who is he. This colonel also died. He is the commander of this area here. I think 3rd Battalion of the 200 Motorized Rifle Brigade. So they went under 6 attacks and reportedly destroyed 7 tanks, 14 armored vehicles. So to say 7 tanks, which means that the entire battalion, almost the entire battalion, has been destroyed in this area here. And we do know from information that 3 battalions was involved in this Ukrainian offensive here. So which means that 3 battalions is 1 brigade. So basically 1 brigade out of the 12 is actually deployed in this site here to fight the Russians. And so the 1 battalion here is largely crippled in terms of its offensive capability, with 7 tanks destroyed. So whether the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's information about the Russians conducting offensive operation, I don't think this is accurate. I don't think the Russians are ready to counterattack. So the Russian lines are still around this area here, and they are trying to hold the line as long as possible, while the Wagner forces try to conquer the rest of Bakhmut city. Within Bakhmut city itself, the Wagner forces have made some advance. They continue to attack the citadel area, and they have managed to almost operational encircle the Nest sector. The Nest sector is actually this area here. This is the Nest sector. They are about to operationally encircle it in this area here, and they also have a foothold on this side. As you can see, nearly around 1/3 of the constructor sector has been penetrated as well. So with this push through the center road of the Levanevskogo Street, which means that the Wagner forces is right in the middle of the citadel area as well, which means we are talking about almost half of the citadel area has been captured. And so the progress is actually quite fast from the Wagner forces. And over on the other line, the last line of defense, so-called, by the Ukrainians, the Russian forces have basically closed up along the entire of it, and there is a possibility that they have already broke through a little bit on this southern side of it. And of course, the Ukrainians are not going to have only just one line. They probably have another line, but this line was going to be the last line. So the Battle of Bakhmut might be going to be over very, very soon. So the Russian forces will continue to finish this Battle of Bakhmut, and then they start to focus onto the greater Bakhmut, the regions around Bakhmut city. And there is information about Marinka. The Russians are still attacking Marinka as usual. This is basically tradition, or basically habit, like drinking water, breathing, and shitting. And then within the Vuhledar region, it continues to look really unstable in this front. The Ukrainians are attacking at Prashestivka and Solotke, limited small force, like recon forces type, while the Russians are desperately shelling Mikhailsky, Vuhledar, Shevchenko, Vodian on both days, which means the Ukrainians have some kind of a huge force that is around this area here that is poised to attack. And the Russian Defense Ministry has consistently been reporting the shelling at Vuhledar and at Vodian. So there must be something that is going on here. It does look like it's rather unstable, and there might be some kind of offensive happening if the Ukrainians can gather the force to do it. There might be a possibility that they can't because of the intensity of the shelling, because in this area here it's known that the Russians have the TOS-1A, which is the flamethrower. There is severe number of airstrikes in this area as well, so it's not going to be easy for the Ukrainians to gather up a force to attack. Within the Zaporizhia line or the Zaporizhia front, the Russians also are shelling Potavka and Malatomashka. This is also of course also at Velika Novosilka, and the Ukrainians have gathered quite a number of forces in this area here, but the offensive is still not happened yet. So So it's pretty weird. I think people need to, the forces that is around this area, both Ukrainian and the Russian side, are definitely holding their breath to see what is going to happen next. And the Russian Air Force on their own are still doing pretty well. They shot down a helicopter, a Mi-24 Hind, over at Selidove, and a Sukhoi 27 over Novohorodivka, and also another helicopter over at Rusivka, near Liman. And the distance are 20 to 30 kilometers away from the front line. So which means that the Russian Air Force is still operating pretty well. As you can see, fighter aviation, these are all taken down by Russian Air Force, because this is quite far away from the front line, so it's usually not air defense for the aircraft getting shot down this far behind the front line. So the Russian Air Force is still doing their job. And so that's the operational update regarding the actions or operations on the Russian side. And it's interesting that the Russian offensive is back again. I thought that it would be over for good until the Ukrainian offensive is over, but the Russians surprised me again. Anyway, do press the like button, subscribe. If you are new to this channel, you have to subscribe. Join the TPA army. You will find this community very, very interesting. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.